Second. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, you are now tuned in to the Investor Show. As always, this is your gracious host, the Prince of Investing, Prince Dykes, coming to you guys and girls live all the way from the beautiful city and state of Denver, Colorado. For all the people that are catching this live, definitely thank you for catching this live or whatnot. But for the people who are catching the playback, I thank you guys and girls for tuning in. But as always, I don't have a lot of time, and I definitely know you guys and girls don't have a lot of time, so we're going to jump straight into it. So today's guest that we have a very special guest, someone that I told people about for the last few days, Valuetainment, PHP Agency. We have a veteran. Well, he has a long story, someone who don't need an introduction to most. So let me go ahead and pretty much tell you a little bit about himself. So essentially about him, he pretty much went from an immigrant to a refugee to a military service member, all the way to an entrepreneur, built a multi-million-dollar insurance agency, PHP Agency. And then on top of that, if that wasn't cool enough, he went out and built the largest entrepreneurship channel on YouTube called Valuetainment. So I see him interview everybody from Kobe Bryant to President Bush to, Kevin Hart, you name it, very inspirational person. So today, I had to bring him in, had to reach out to him to talk to him. I want to learn some of his secret sauce. What is he doing? Some of his stories. What can we learn from him? So from his own path and from the people he's been around, the people he's talked to, I know he has a lot of knowledge to give. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest, Mr. Valuetainment, PHP founder and CEO, Mr. Patrick Beck-Davis. How you doing today, sir? Oh, your microphone is muted.
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for coming on. First of all, I want to say, for the people out there, I maybe I butchered your introduction a little bit. So tell people about yourself if I missed something or something like that.
Born and raised in Iran, lived there 10 years, escaped, lived in Germany for about a year and a half, 2 years at a refugee camp, came to the States, went to the Army, 101st Airborne, got out, started working at Bally Total Fitness, wanted to be a bodybuilder, win Mr. Olympia, kind of followed Arnold's footsteps. And then one day I met a girl named Jean Vieira at Venice Beach, California, who worked at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter as a broker, and she was the advisor to many of the Laker players. And I went into Morgan Stanley Dean Witter a day before 9/11, got my Series 7, 66, 31, 26 life and health, and then my career started in finance. I went to Transamerica. After Trans for 7.5 years, I started PHP Agency in October of 2009. We now have 14,500 agents in 49 states. With 130 offices, about 500,000 square feet of office space, and accidentally started a YouTube channel that grew to 2.3 million subs and a few billion minutes wide. So that's my background.
That's your background. A little humble brag there, But the first thing I want to get into, you spoke about a very, very interesting path, right? You spoke about being, coming from Iran, turning to a refugee, joining the military, then getting into the finance or whatnot, right? And it's something that the first question I wanted to ask you was, what was your turning point? Take us back to December 31st behind Universal Studios. What was your turning point? What was the turning point that turned you into what you became today?
It's a good question. I'm sitting in my car, Ford Focus. I had just bought a double at In-N-Out, and I made my own lemonade. When you're broke, you order water with lemon, extra lemon, and then you squeeze the lemon with sweet and low, and that's your lemonade. And my buddy and I are in the car, and we split the burger in half. He gets half, I get half. We're listening to Ryan Seacrest's countdown, 10, 9, 8. And when it went into New Year, was 02 to 03, 02 to 03. There was no excitement in my spirit at all for me going from one year to a different year. For a lot of people, it may have been a happy New Year. For me, it was just another New Year. A lot of people experience Christmas, and some of them experience Merry Christmas. For me, it's just another Christmas that I was having at that time. Life wasn't too exciting. And when I heard the countdown, while everybody was going to nightclubs, partying, excited, I was annoyed. I was frustrated. I was very agitated with where life was at. And I sat there and I asked my buddy, I said, how much longer are we going to live this life? How many more years are we going to be just chasing skirts and that becomes the game for the rest of our lives? How boring of a game is that to constantly do that? You know, especially when you do a lot of it, to you eventually it gets a little bit old and you're broke and your main priority is women and nightclubs and partying 5-6 nights a week. I talked to my friend and I said, look, I'm done playing this game. And then I went home, next day got up, went to work, and another event that took place at the same time is my dad had a massive heart attack. He had a massive heart attack. He went to UCLA Medical Center. And when he was at UCLA Medical Center, I went upstairs to see how he was doing. And the doctor, you know, they weren't, you know, he wasn't being treated royally. He was calling him. Nobody was going to him. And I got upset. I said, you guys got to go take care of my dad. And I got a little bit vocal, probably out of line. And the nurses started saying, sir, you don't raise your voice at us. This is a government hospital. You don't pay for this. Taxpayers are paid to take care of your dad. They called security. They kicked me out. She was right. I went downstairs in my car. I cried like a little baby in my Ford Focus. And I said, this will never happen again. I went to work the next day at 4 a.m. And I told myself, I am not stopping until I make my millions. And I ended up never stopping. But May of 2010, May of 2004, I made $18,495. On May 29th, I got my first $10,000 check in a day. And that's the last time my dad ever reached in his pocket to pay for anything. From that day on, I said, if in America you want to be free, you got to make your tens of millions and have that money in the bank so nobody can bully you. It was my number one formula originally. I said, I got to make my money so no one can sit there and tell me, use their degree against me, use their political limelight against me, use any of that stuff, because you cannot be bullied if you got money sitting around in the bank and no one can force you to do anything. You choose to do whatever you wanted to do. And that made a lot of sense to me at that time. And then obviously the rest is history.
Nice. Very great, you know, story or whatnot. And it's something that you just hit on in your story, right? You spoke about how your dad was a motivation and how New Year's you changed the time, right? Now I want to get into the question of, you spoke about your first million. How did you make your first million and what did that feeling feel like? You kind of touched on it a little bit when you said you had that $10,000. When you knew you was a millionaire with your path, how did you make it and how did that turn everything for you?
Best way to describe it is this. This is the best way to describe it. So imagine if you go and a kid says, see you after high school, meaning see you after school. What do you mean? Let's go fight after school. After school? After school. Where? Behind a football stadium. You want to meet me after school? Yeah, I want to meet you after school. Let's go. Okay, great. It's fourth period. Each period, all you're thinking about is that fight that's coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go to that fight by yourself because you're a new student. He comes with a crew of 10. You fight. If you knock him out, his buddies are going to back him up. You're going to get your ass handed to you if you decide to fight. Making your first million feels like you got a bigger backup when you go to fight against others. You can't be bullied. You can stand up because you know you got money backing you up and you don't desperately need to make any decisions. And many of the fights can be avoided because you got strong backup. See, U.S., it doesn't, the reason why U.S. has not gone to war in a long time and no one attacks us, minus, you know, obviously some of the 9/11, some of the Pearl Harbor stuff. I'm talking about we've never had a massive war where it's all out an attack on U.S. Why? Because we have a strong military. What happens when you have a strong military? It's not that you need to use that strong military to go to war. You have that strong military so people don't fight you. When you have the money, one of the biggest benefits is people avoid picking a fight against you because you have money. It's a major source of freedom that words can't describe when you experience that. That was one of the biggest motivations because I lived in Iran. Iran is all about being controlled. You know, in the Middle East, if you want to be rich, go into politics because when you go into politics, you use your powers as a politician or a cop to bully any local business owners, to tax them and take money from them. There are very manipulative ways of making money, and it's not the other way around. Versus here, I have the ability to go out there and make the money, and as long as I'm a law-abiding citizen and I do it right, for the most part, I'm free. And that's probably one of the biggest, most incredible feelings when you're able to do that. And it happened to me in my late 20s, early 30s.
Okay. Now, you spoke about being an immigrant and coming from outside of America. something that we lack here in America. Sometimes I believe we're very spoiled, by me being a military member traveling around the world. I get to see a different perspective, right? And it kind of lets me know how grateful I am when I'm an American citizen, right? It just seems in your story and from me watching you and following you that you had this grit about you by being an immigrant because you looked at so many opportunities in America. My next question I want to ask you is, what can Americans learn from immigrants? Because immigrants come over here, don't know the language, don't know much, whatever the case may be, not don't know much in general, but don't know much about the country. And they come in and they're like you, turns into you to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. What can Americans sitting at home right now, catching this playback, or however they're catching this, what can Americans learn from immigrants?
It's funny you say this. I'll give it to you from the best, I'll give you an analogy that maybe this will make sense to you. So imagine you have two kids. One of them comes from a very, very wealthy family. One of them doesn't. One of the families has a big last name. The other one doesn't. One last name is known worldwide. I just interviewed Robert Kennedy a few days ago. Let's just say it's Kennedy. Say it's Vanderbilt. Say it's Trump. Say it's Clinton. Say it's Obama. Say it's Reagan. You got a prominent last name. People know this last name. The other one is a last name no one knows about. No one knows about that last name. Many times when you come from a big last name with a lot of backup, you don't have to work as hard to make your last name proven because somebody else did that work for you. Mm. Somebody else went and worked hard to make Vanderbilt a real name that now you can use that last name to go do what you want to do, AKA Anderson Cooper. More power to him. He's a Vanderbilt, right? Donald Trump, his father, Fred Trump and the grandfather. These are people that worked very, very hard to give an opportunity for the grandson and for him to go out there and be a president, right? If you look at a Joseph Kennedy paid the price, and the grandfather, the father of Joseph Kennedy also paid a price as a mayor to allow that family to go become what they're. There's 105 Kennedys right now, give or take worldwide. And if you're a Kennedy, you pretty much can do a lot of different things just because your last name is Kennedy. The biggest difference is America is that kid with the powerful last name, and immigrants are the ones without that powerful last name. Many Americans take this country for granted because they've already had somebody else that made that money. Let me have my Xenia come and turn this off. Hang on one second. Can you come in here? So many other people who come from a background without that, they have to prove themselves. So I come to America. No one knows my David last name. No one's heard that last name before. What is my dad's responsibility? My dad's responsibility was to give his kids the best opportunity possible for him to win. What was that? The biggest opportunity possible. Can you turn down the audio on my computer? The email keeps ringing, so if you just lowered it, it'd be good. My dad brought me to America. He did his part. Let me put him in the best situation to win. Let's take him to America. Check. He did his part. My part is to prove that my dad made the right decision. So then it's me going out there because I'm only 12 years old when I came here. My dad was 44 years old when he came here. English is not his first language, et cetera, et cetera. I got to prove that right. That decision that was the right decision. Then I got to go win. I think too often Americans forget how incredible a nation this is. Americans forget how unbelievable it is that you can live in a place where you can make fun of the president and nothing will happen to you. I remember when we first came to the States, my mother was watching the news, and on the news, one of the announcers was talking bad about President Bush Sr. And my mom said, poor man, they're going to kill him. And my relative says, no, in America, you can talk smack about the president all you want. Matter of fact, comedians make their money doing that. You can't do that in Iran. You cannot go into comedy in Iran and make fun of the president. You can do that here. We can have assembly here. We can have any religion you want to have here. You can make as much money as you want to make here. You cannot do that stuff in other countries. So sometimes people forget that. But every single time that happens, typically the following shows up. Here's what happens. Either somebody who is an immigrant comes in and takes all your excuses away and they win, or America gets a black eye where people remember and they say, I remember when America was amazing. Why did I vote this way and screw the whole thing up? Sometimes countries need to go through that as well.
Okay. Now that's a good thing that you spoke about. I definitely agree with that. That you come with something to prove. You come with the chip on your shoulder of like I really, like I see it sometimes even with myself. Some people they're already celebrities, so I have celebrity friends and they can get into a door 10 times as easier, where you have to work 10 times as hard, and they take it for granted. They're just like, oh, I'll go do this if I want to. You're like, what? That's a once in a lifetime opportunity for me to get into that door, and they would just blow it off. And you're just like, why would you do that? But that puts an extra grit behind you to even get to that certain spot. Now, the question I want to get into now, for the people that's out there that says, okay, you come to America, you're an immigrant, you serve in the military, you get out, like you said, you went to the financial industry, then you started the PHP Agency. My question to you, right? How did you raise the money for your PHP agency? How does a person that come in that says, wow, this guy can't even speak the language, and they're immigrants and they come over. How did you raise money for your business?
So that's a great question. So for me, my dad worked at a 99-cent store in Inglewood. So if you're familiar with Inglewood, it's not the safest area in LA. So he worked right down the street from Great Western Forum, and he worked at a 99-cent store as a cashier. So my dad didn't have any money to his name. That's why I joined the Army. I joined the Army because I didn't have a place to live. I sold my Chevy S10 long bed and to go into the military. I went in the military and I said, I'm going to do this for 20 years. And that was my plan. I was supposed to retire out of the Army 3 years ago at 38 years old. And so I'm like, okay, what am I going to be doing with my life? Then when I got into financial services, my rule number one, Prince, became to shadow the right person. I went and found the best person to shadow, not the best company to work for, not the biggest company to work for. Sometimes people want to work for a big company rather than the best person. I would much rather work for an average company, but work with the best person in a marketplace than work with a big established company and work with a mediocre person. You get a much better benefit of going to the Bulls, and the Bulls have never won a single championship before, and your name is Scottie Pippen, but you get a chance to play with Michael Jordan, you're in better hands than going and playing for the, another organization with a big name, but their players are pretty much tired and they're not like Michael. You want to shadow the best guys. So I want to shadow the best guys in the marketplace. And then I decided to go out there and save money. In 2004, my credit score was 484, 495, 499. That's my credit score. I kept the statement till today. I was $49,000 in debt. And I said, okay, let's get into focus of saving money. So every time I would make 30 grand, 40 grand, $50,000, rather than buying that Rolex watch, rather than buying that Ferragamo shoe, I didn't buy a Ferragamo shoe till my 5th year in business. And I never bought a Rolex watch for myself till my 16th year in business. Never bought myself a Rolex watch. I had $250,000 in a bank account while I was driving a Ford Focus. I'm driving a Ford Focus with $250,000 in the bank. And my friends are buying S600s and they're buying, all these exotic Ferraris and Lambos. I got $250,000 and they barely have $100,000 in the bank, but they're driving a nice car. I said, nope, you're going to save that money. And so the way I did business with people was the following. People would say, who's this 26, 27, 28 year old? I would say, Johnny, here's a question for you. So what's that? How old are you, Johnny? I'm 45. Okay, I'm 27. Is it fair to say if you are 45 years old, if you have more cash and savings than I do, I listen to you. But if I have more cash and savings than you listen to me. Is that fair? Yeah, that's fair. Great. You call your bank. Why don't you go first? No problem. I'll go first. I called my bank and I would put it on speaker and it would say the account. I said, okay, here you go. Your turn. He says, I'm working with you. I said, fair enough. So I started earning people's respect because of savings, not because the car I got parked outside. Now, obviously, later on came the Aventador, the Ferraris, the Lambos, the Rolls Royce, the Dons, all the crazy stuff came afterwards as well. The $100,000 watches and $1 million cards and all this stuff, baseball cards. All of that came after 15,000 square foot homes and $7 million homes. All of that stuff came afterwards. But during the time of coming up, I was always about cash. Look at it right now. Here's an interesting thing we're going on right now. There's this debate that's constantly comes up about cash. Cash is trash. Cash is trash. Cash is still trash. Cash is king. Cash is not king. Cash is trash. Okay. I think people have to realize what investors like Ray Dalio and other billionaires mean when they say cash is trash. What they're saying is leaving money as a form of investment in a money market account or a cash that's not building any interest in your investment portfolio may be trash. Yes, fair. What they're also saying is they're speaking about ultra high net worth people who are worth 30 million to $999 billion, $999 billion, that it's not good to have a big portfolio in cash. That's also fair. They did a study showing what most people's assets were based on having $10,000 in savings, 100,000, a million, 10 million, 100 million, and a billion. Each time it went higher, the percentage of their money in cash got smaller and smaller and smaller, which is how it's supposed to be. And the size of their real estate holdings got very small, but their business interests grew a ton, constantly grew. When I was first getting ready to start my insurance agency, I stacked all my cash. I didn't buy a house. I lived in an apartment complex where my neighbors were porn stars in Chatsworth. If you know anything about Chatsworth, Chatsworth is the capital of porn industry. In the 90s, pretty much in the 90s, 80% of porn was shot in Chatsworth. My neighbors were all porn stars. You know, my wife and I would come to work and we'd go to the swimming pool on a Sunday. I'm like, babe, we're not at a regular swimming pool, man. They may as well shoot a movie, right? It was so weird, but we were living that. But the point is we had cash. And because we had cash, we were able to withstand anything that could happen. When I started a company, within 2 months, within 4 weeks, we got sued on October 29th of 2009 from a competitor that I left. They sued me because they wanted to eliminate a business. It's a form in the insurance industry. This is very common. They didn't do anything unethical. They're supposed to do that. I've never been sued since, but I got sued at that moment. When they sued me, the first thing they said, the CEO that sued me, his name is Tim. He ended up being on my board 2 years later. He said, let's make him spend some money. Let's run him dry. Meaning what? They didn't expect me to have any cash. I settled 8 months later. They gave me a big check to settle only if I paid it right. They're assuming that if I pay it, I'm done. I cut it. They were surprised. If they would have dragged out the lawsuit, I would have gone out of business. I settled ASAP. I was able to survive, and obviously at this point of the game, last month, by the way, in the month of April, we had our biggest month in the history of the company. We wrote somewhere around 6,500 insurance policies in 1 month, and this has happened all during the pandemic. So then bring it to now, okay? Bring it to now. All these small businesses are being bailed out. You saw Harvard went out and got an $8.55 million check from the government while they have $40 billion of endowments. Lakers got a $4.6 million check. They felt so bad. They gave it back. You're hearing all these different businesses that got the money that they're giving it back. Harvard never gave it back, by the way. They still have $40 billion in endowments. You know what we did? My CFO and I sat down and we said, are we taking money from the government? You know how much money we would have qualified for $2 million? You know how much we took? Nothing. We didn't take a single penny from the government. Why not? Because we have cash. So times like this, we went and started recruiting talent. We went and invested a few $1 million in technology to even speed up our process even more. We just took the time of processing one policy from 15 minutes to 2 minutes. That made us a few $1 million on what ended up happening because of technology. So the next time you hear an expert in the financial industry tell you cash is trash, remember to dissect that scenario and realize they're not talking about small business owners or entrepreneurs that need cash to survive during times like this. Because when 30 million people get unemployed at a time like this and people are not coming to your restaurant or business, what matters the most is for you to have cash so you don't make any emotional decisions. So to answer your question for you, I went and saved that money to allow me to build a business, not money from family, parents, nobody. I saved it and allowed me to pivot the way we wanted to have a bigger advantage. And by the way, the other benefit was the fact that I didn't need to give up equity to anybody up front. A lot of times, if you raise money too early, I wouldn't need to give up 50% or 60% of the company. I never had to do that. I'm the majority owner of the company. De La Hoya is one of my investors. Gabriel Brenner is one of my investors. But I'm still in control of the company because I was able to start it with my own savings.
Okay. Now, the next question that I have for you, right? You spoke about, you sat down with Ray Dalio, Robert Kiyosaki, you know, all the mafia bosses, all the bodybuilding people, presidents, Kobe, everybody, right? With people, when I sat back, I'm like, well, who is this Patrick David guy? How did he get in contact? How do you get in contact with anyone? Yeah, I know you did a show on this, but I want you to explain to people, because people always say, how do you get in contact with these people? Who is this guy? How does he have that type of juice?
So for me, we've never paid a guest money to be a guest on Valuetainment, never. What we do is if somebody spoke at an event, I pay those guys. Like if Kobe was paid to be a keynote at an annual convention with 7,000 people there, that's a different story. But if somebody comes to, like Mark Cuban was never paid anything. However, here's what Mark Cuban was paid. I think a lot of people are not doing this anymore nowadays. And here's what it was. I contacted Mark Cuban 7 years ago. I said, hey, Mark, I'd love to interview you on my YouTube channel. How big's your YouTube channel? 1,000 subscribers. You want me to be a guest on your channel? I said, yes. I said, how would you like me to move 3,000 books for you? He says, books? He says, you think I need 65 cents times 3,000 books? I said, that makes a lot of sense. You don't. He's worth $3 billion at the time. I said, what do you need me to move for you right now? He says, I just started an app called Cyberdust. If you can get me some downloads, I will consider being a guest. I said, no problem. How many downloads? We talked about a number. It was like 1,500 downloads. I said, great, let me get to work. I said, can I tell you when I'm going to start driving it so you can track the amount of downloads? He says, no problem. I said, great. This was like 6 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago. So then I went to work. And I wanted to get somebody like Mark early, because if you get somebody like Mark, it'll help you get other people on your platform, but also build a reputation for giving back on the people that you're bringing on board. So what do? We went to work. All of a sudden, I called him. I said, Mark, go take a look at the amount of downloads today and look how many different states you got those downloads from. He looked, he says, yep, you did your downloads. I said, great. When can we do the interview? Then we set up the time. I flew out to American Airlines Center. We interviewed in his office at American Airlines Center. And we did a nice hour and a half interview with him. And I gave him a nice gift at the end. But it was because he got something from us. He got something from us. Next thing I did is I got a lot of times when people are starting new podcasts, they want everybody to come to them. We went to people. I went and bought an RV, and I got in the RV, and I wrapped the RV with my face on it. And I went and did a 10,000-mile tour. I went from LA to Miami to New York to Niagara Falls to San Fran, back to LA, 30 days. And I spoke in front of like 15,000 people during that time. And every city we went to, we kept interviewing somebody as well. Robert Kiyosaki, we'd go interview. And it was a massive blitz. Cardone, all of these people we went through. This was a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago when I did this. And then when we got bigger and we got to 50,000 subs or 100,000 subs, and then we said, what do we want to do now? We sat down and got a little bit more clear about what we wanted to do with the business. Then we said, we're going to be a media company, and we changed the channel. I like 20, 30,000 subs. We changed the channel from Patrick Bet-David to Valuetainment. A lot of people want to have their show be named by their name. I wanted to build a company based on a media company called Valuetainment. So Valuetainment at that time was a publicly traded company in Germany owned by a man named Dirk. So I called him up. I said, I'd like to buy your domain. He says, I'm a publicly traded company. I said, I'm going to put a lot of content with the name Valuetainment. It's going to be linked to us. What do you want to do about it? He says, I'm not selling you the domain. I said, okay, cool. So 6 months later, we got to work. We started creating content. And then eventually he sent me an email. He says, I'll sell you the domain. I said, how much? He said, $500,000. I'm not buying it for $500,000. Anyways, a year ago, we ended up buying the domain for like $27,000. And now we own valuetainment.com, and it's growing into what it is today. Moral of the story is, at the beginning stages, you got to do so much for your guests for them to recommend you to others, because how you treat a guest, like let's just say I come to your show and after the show, you say you're going to move me books. And I watch when the video launches and I notice nothing moves on my books. Somebody calls me and says, would you recommend this guy? I say, no, he's not going to sell you anything. He just wants to get your name on the show. Your credibility goes down. What we do on the other side is the following. So I get Ray Dalio on. I say, Ray, how many books you want to move? He says, I don't know. I said, how about I get you 10,000 downloads of your app, Principles? He says, 10. He says, if you give me 500, that's good. We got him 10,000 downloads. How do I know that? We run links and we drive traffic at the end, and we show how many times it went to the app to be downloaded, and we send that link to him. His PR firm was blown away. He says, moving forward, anybody I do an interview with, I want them to follow Patrick's format. That's how you start building a reputation, a marketplace where everybody says, if you want to move books, if you want to move apps, if you want to move any of that stuff, you want to go talk to Pat. He's going to ask you tough questions, but he's going to definitely move whatever you want him to move. So it's all about what kind of a reputation you want to build in a marketplace. And then people realize you're real, then others are willing to come and talk to you based on your track record.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So pretty much you got to give people something in order to get something. Don't always walk in. And I remember you saying that, just don't walk into a room saying, hey, what can I get? What can I get? Always go in and say, what can I give? How can I platform be of service to you?
I'll tell you this. I had a old friend in the military. Since you're in the Navy, I think you'll like the story. His name was Casey Bell. Okay, not Casey JoJo, Casey Bell. Okay, but he had the game of Casey JoJo. I'm telling you, this guy had more game than I could. He was phenomenal. We'd go to the mall. He was always good with the ladies. I couldn't understand. I was 18 years old. So one day I said, what's the deal with your game? He says, when you get a chance to have some private time with the lady, make sure you go above and beyond, because they all talk. Once they talk, others will call you. It's like, well, I don't understand what he's saying here. Obviously, I finally understood what he's talking about, because the better you are in bed, everyone eventually wants to experience how good you are in bed. Same goes in business. The better you are with people, as you bring them on their show, everybody else wants to be on your show.
Oh, nice. Now, another question I want to ask you, since there's probably veterans that's going to tune in, that are tuned in right now. The question I want to ask you, what advice would you give a veteran? You did your time in the military, and you got veterans. Some people are going to do 20 years and retire. Some people are going to do 5 years. You know how the game goes. And you did a video, right? You talked about 19 things that helped you out as a veteran. What advice would you give to veterans? What inside of them they can use as a competitive advantage as they seek to go into their second career?
I like what you're doing. When you said you got your Series 65, life and health, you're in your 17th year, you're planning on retiring in the next 3 years. And then afterwards, you'd like to go into the financial industry, and you got your bachelor's, associate, and master's. You're already preparing for your exit on what you're going to be doing when you're leaving. Most people don't do that. Most people wait till they ETS to know what they're going to be doing then. It's just kind of like, well, I'll see what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to go be a police officer, cop, or firefighter, or GI, or whatever it may be, right? I think you got to prepare years before you leave the military on your next move. The one thing that we forget, military folks, in military, you're forced to work hard. I just had a call with one of my leaders right now. He makes $1 million. He made $1.5 million last year with us. Had a call with him. I said, you know what? I'm getting a feeling you've reached a number that you're very comfortable with. He says, what do you mean? I said, it seems like it took only $1 million a year to slow you down. He says, no, it didn't. I said, yeah. So you've slowed down. I said, I don't see urgency. I don't see any movement. I think you're just comfortable. I disagree with you, Pat. What are you talking about? All this other stuff. In the military, there are two different kinds of workers, Prince. There are those who love to work. There are those who work because they're forced to work. Those who work hard because they're forced to work, when they get out as a civilian, they're not going to excel because they work because they're forced to work. But those in the military who work hard and love to work hard and they love to compete, when you get out, you're going to do an incredible thing in business, no matter what industry you go into. I just spoke to a group of Navy SEALs and Delta and Special Forces and all these other guys right here local in Dallas. There's a group that only works directly with the SEALs. And when I had a conversation with these guys, I said, sometimes you guys think you come out of the military and you're going to be taken care of for the rest of your life just because you're a SEAL, just because you are doing whatever you're doing. I said, so no one cares if you're an E8. No one cares if you're an E9. No one cares if you're a sergeant major or a first sergeant or a captain or a major or lieutenant or even a general. Nobody cares in the civilian world. It's like being a great basketball player and then going and wanting to play hockey. No one cares you're a great basketball player. You're playing a different game. So if you go with that mindset, you will typically have the tendency of not be willing to shadow somebody and be a good student. Now, if you go from the mindset of saying, I'm not afraid of work, I'm not afraid of getting dirty, I'm not afraid of going out there doing my part, I still take care of my body, I still take care of my physical shape, I still do 82 push-ups, I still make my runs, I still go out there and I'm not put on weight. A lot of people in the military put on a lot of weight, and you can be in the military and be out of shape. And people are always surprised. They think everybody in the military is in shape. If you want to get out on the marketplace and compete, you got to take care of your body. You got to take care of your mind. You got to take care of yourself emotionally. Because when you get out, if you apply what you learn in the military with the leadership skills that we have, you can do big things. But if you get out and you don't apply some of those things because those things have been gone for a long time, it's going to be a very difficult transition to being a civilian. So it's very good to prepare yourself mentally and emotionally before you get out. The reality is I would never be who I am today if I wouldn't have gone to the military. Never. I would never be who I am today if I didn't go to the 101st Airborne and I didn't join the Army. Never. I would never be the guy who I am today. Army taught me about hard work. Army taught me about what it is to go 36 hours without sleep when you're in the field. You know, Army and military taught me about what it is to wake up in the morning, 4 o'clock formation after being up till 12 o'clock. And
oh wait, hold on, Patrick. Tell them the time you almost got kicked out in boot camp.
Yeah, because of the laundry, the big fight I got into in the laundry room because, you know, my temper got a hold of me in the laundry room. I got into a very bad fight, and they kicked me out, and they said, you don't belong in the military. You can't stay cool. We are allowing you to get out of the Army. And so I went and talked to my sergeants. They gave me the phone. They said, you can call anybody you want. I went and made a few phone calls. All my buddies said, get out of the Army. We'll have a great time. And I said, you know what? I'm good. They said, think about it for one night. Sleep on it. I slept on it. Woke up in the morning. I said, no, I'm staying in. They said, you know, if you're staying in, we're going to give you a hard time more than anybody else. I said, I get it, but I'm staying in. They did everything in their power to make me quit. I didn't quit. And that became a big part of the respect I earned from my sergeants. And till today, I'm friends with them on Facebook. They're obviously 10, 15 years older than me. Mm-hmm. But the amount of respect I have for these people is just, it's priceless on what they did to this young guy.
Okay. Now, this wouldn't be the investor show if I didn't ask you this next question. I looked up on Celebrity Net Worth. They said you was worth about somewhere between $75 to $150 million or whatever the case may be. I don't know how accurate that is, but it doesn't matter. The next question I got for you, with all the coronavirus going on, the stock market crash, and all the good stuff like that, I got to ask you, what are you investing in?
Great question. So today, there's going to be three different types of businesses. You got those who are going to go out of business, shut down, those who are just going to survive, and those who are going to come out stronger. Okay, so shut down, survive, come out stronger. During this time, here's what is going to happen. It's very important for me to show this to you because any other way, it won't make sense. Okay, let's say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So let's just say you are competing in a market for any industry. This is what your competitors look like. Everybody has their own market share. If you notice, G has the biggest market share. Okay, G has the biggest and A is the smallest. And this is what it looks like. Let's just say you're a restaurant, maybe you're a real estate agent, and G is the best real estate agent, and A is an average real estate agent, whatever industry it may be. This is pre-coronavirus. Here's what it's going to look like post-coronavirus. Okay, post-coronavirus, this is what happens.
We're getting a lesson here from Valuetainment itself, live on air.
Here's what happens. This is pre. All these companies are in business, but G, E, and C went out of business. And now here's what it looks like. A now got a bigger market share. B stayed about the same size. D got bigger. F became massive. How did that happen? Maybe G was sloppy with their money. Maybe C wasn't focused and they panicked. Maybe E decided to sell themselves out to F because they were just worried if they're going to survive. So they just said, F, come and buy us on 50 cents on a dollar. But no matter what happens, this is going to take place. Warren Buffett just announced yesterday he owns 11%, I believe, in Delta, 10% in Southwest and American. I believe it's like 9% in United, one of those things. He sold all his shares in all the 4 airlines. He was a 10% owner on all those airlines. He sold all of his shares yesterday. The market's down, obviously, with the airlines today. I think Delta's down $1 or something like that. And that's a big number on 926. He sold his shares. So what happened there? What's going to happen to these airlines? I can tell you what's most likely going to happen to these airlines if the government starts bailing them out. One of them is going to go out of business. Somebody else is going to buy them on discount. Somebody else who's got more money and more cash is going to pick those guys up. What I'm investing in today is those companies in my marketplace who didn't have savings. I'm recruiting their talent. Their talent that would be worth $250,000 in a good economy is worth $170 right now during a bad economy. Today, in a marketplace like this, I'm investing on buying other small businesses and softwares. Why am I buying other small businesses and softwares? Because I'm making my pie bigger. So I'm not necessarily buying a stock in Amazon or stock in those kinds of things, although I'm doing that as well with my own investment portfolio. I am more growing my base with the thing that gives me the biggest return, which is the company I'm building. That's what I'm investing into. Now, as far as money goes and investment goes, there's a few things you got to be looking at. There's a lot of talk about gold standard, gold standard, gold standard. What if we return to gold standard? What if we return to gold standard? What's going to happen if we return to gold standard? Some say it's going to happen. Many say it's not going to happen. But I think one ought to think about a little bit of gold right now, because if we do end up going to gold standard and the economy goes bad for the next 6, 12, 18 months, if we do go to gold standard, gold ain't going to go to gold standard at $1,800 price. It may go to 3,000, 5,000, 6,000. Say it goes to 10,000. You're going to want to have a few pieces of gold for that to take place for you, no more than 5% of your portfolio. And then meanwhile, a lot of people think this market's going to come back up very quickly. We've been printing money so much, this quantitative easing of just constantly print money, print money, print money, print money, print money. The more you print money, gold does better and certain investments do better. I'm a guy that's a mutual fund guy. I'm a stock guy. I own a lot of stock. I own a lot of mutual fund myself, a lot of it. But I also know that you got to also see what's going on with money right now. You cannot just fabricate these interest rates, negative interest rates, or 1% interest rate. You know what means with interest rate. This is how interest rates work. If this is interest rates, and this is property value, okay? When interest rates are lower, property value is higher, okay? If interest rates go higher, okay, property value is going to go what? Damn. Lower. So if today $1 million home, if $1 million home today is worth $1 million because interest rates are nothing, if interest rates go up, that property value is going to drop to $700,000. Interest rates have to go up in the next few years. If they go to 5%, realtors are taking a big hit, loan officers are taking a big hit, mortgage bank, title reps, real estate's going to take a massive hit. So for somebody that's looking into that side of it as well, if you hang tight a little bit, a lot of good opportunities of real estate are going to come out here very soon, but those rates are not going to stay where they're at. They have to go up. If the rates stay low for too long, insurance company cannot withstand it. A lot of people, a lot of industries cannot be around for low interest rates. So oil prices dropped -37 in a day where they're giving away the oil. We can't handle that. We can't handle interest rates being very, very low. We cannot handle constantly printing paper. All of these things are getting together for an explosion. I was looking at the Dow today, 23,300 points means nothing. It's all fake 23,300. None of it is real. It's all manipulation of the market. You cannot manipulate the market for too long. How many cycles of steroids and growth hormone can your body take? For how long? If you're fully juicing all the time, maybe 6 months, say 12 months, maybe bodybuilders, even bodybuilders. I have bodybuilders as guests here, people who are on Mr. Olympia with me, who sit right here when they're talking to me. They can't be on GH and growth hormone and steroids for too long. Their body has to have some kind of a break. Our economy right now has been on GH and growth hormone for 10 years. Eventually, the body's going to break down. And you just have to be prepared for it. So it's nothing crazy's happened to the market yet, just so everybody knows. The Dow was at 28. It's at 23. That's nothing. Nothing.
Well, what do you got to say to the people that say, well, we did have a dip at to 18,000 last month. Well, in March, we had a dip.
Not up to put $3 trillion back into the economy. Yeah. We put $3 trillion back into the economy. That doesn't mean businesses grew. Look, just because we put $3 trillion into the economy, that doesn't mean companies grew. Companies didn't grow. Yeah, some of the companies like Amazon and Walmart and some of the essentials, yeah, fine, they did. The non-essentials, how many non-essential industry do we have? Many of them. They didn't necessarily grow. They took a hit, but they took some money because they got bailed out. That doesn't mean they grew. So it's fake growth that you're looking at. You have to be very prepared for what's about to happen. And by the way, Warren Buffett doesn't sell 10% of his airline, 4 airlines that he owns. And this is how he said it. We just feel travel industry is going to be, not going to be recovering anytime soon. But look, here's what I will tell you. We're also not saying that it's a bad investment. We've just decided to get out of it because the money that we invested, we've made our returns, we made our money back, and we think it's time to move on. Very political answer to give because he doesn't want to hurt these guys long term. But watch what happened. Don't be surprised if 18 to 24 months from now, when airlines hit really low, they go and buy 30% of these companies. Why? We're going to be traveling 3 years from now. We just may not be traveling like we were before in the next 6, 12, 18 months. We eventually are. So pay attention to the airline industry for the next 6 to 18 months. They're going to go lower than what they are today. I would assume so. But a lot of this manipulation stuff that we're doing with the economy just to get the economy going, it's not going to last a long time.
Okay. So you spoke about you're going to grab into small businesses, right? You didn't really touch on real estate too much. You spoke about gold. That's pretty much what we got from Pat Davis. That's how you look at the economy and investing.
I think real estate hasn't hit the low yet. I would hang out on real estate.
Okay. Now, for people out there, I know you got a new book coming out called Your Next 5 Moves, right? And tell people, how can they support you? What products? How can they products? YouTube? What do you want? What do you need? How people can support Pat Davis and Valuetainment?
I think the biggest thing is, how I can bring value to you. Look, I don't need to write a book to make money. I'm not an author for a living. I run a company. I have my employees right out here. I'm in my office. I'm actually doing this out of my office. So this is not like my house. I'm in my office. If I turn on that light, you will see a bunch of employees that are across that window that are working here. So I don't wake up in the morning, create YouTube content because I need another $100,000 check from YouTube. I know how to make money in business. The reason why I wrote this book is because it's what people ask me the most. And here's what it was. Mm-hmm. People kept asking me, saying, Pat, what do I do next? 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 And a lot of people would ask these questions. So, what is your next focus right now in your life? What are you going to be doing next right now? I said, listen, very often people ask questions from people at the phase they're at when they need to ask a question of the phase they're currently in. What does this mean? Well, somebody says, I want to be the governor of the state of Florida one day. Great. What move is that? Is that move 13? Is that move 38? Is that move 29? Is that move 22? Maybe it's a move 38. But if you try to do governor on move number 6, maybe you're going to fail miserably. And maybe you got to make sure you make your methodical moves until you go to move 38. Well, I want to buy a $6 million home. Okay, great. Is that a move number 19? Is that a move 13? Is that a move 28? Are you better off taking that money that you're going to put in a $6 million home back into your business, because then you can buy the house cash years from now versus having to stress about your $70,000 a month payment? What is the right thing to do? So when I wrote this book, it was all about knowing your next 5 moves at the current phase you're at, not at the current phase another person is at the current phase you're at with your next 5 moves. And it's very methodical. It's very strategic. I have a whole chapter about power plays, which if you're in the business world, people are going to do a lot of power plays against you. And if you don't know how to handle power plays, they will bully you out of business. That happens all the time. The whole last move is about mastering power plays, how to beat Goliath and control the narrative, how to sell, negotiate, and influence, how to cultivate your power and stay battle tested. This book is all about knowing your next 5 moves. When you think about grandmasters in the game of chess, the average chess player knows how to make their next 1 or 3 moves. The pros know how to make their next 5 moves. A master knows their next 10 moves. A grandmaster knows his or her next 15 moves. Nothing is different in the world of business. If you face anybody that's constantly winning, I can tell you, Trump didn't all of a sudden decide to become president at the age of 70. That was a move that he had in mind maybe at the age of 18, but he knew that could have been move 73. There's a lot of people that have big visions, but if you put your order of your moves properly, you can have pretty much any of your visions become a reality. This book can be ordered at Amazon, titled Your Next 5 Moves. And if you order it and you read it, I look forward to hearing your thoughts once you're able to finish the book.
All right, so we're going to do this right here. The first 2 people to comment Valuetainment, if you comment Valuetainment, we're going to send 2 copies out to you, courtesy on the Investor Show. So if you email me or comment, the first 2 people, Valuetainment or prince@childrensfinancialliteracy.org, you're going to get 2 copies of The Next 5 Moves by Patrick Beck Davis. Now, the last question I got for you, I know you got to get running. You always speak about how you do a good job of reading people, right? You sit down with all type of people from the top to bottom. You came from the bottom yourself, being an immigrant, things like that. What is your read on Prince Dykes?
I think Prince Dykes is trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Prince Dykes is trying to do the right thing, and I think he's learning. He's trying to figure out what positioning his next moves are going to be. But I don't think he's 100% clear yet on what exactly it's going to be. I think he's still trying to figure it out.
That was pretty good. I give you on that one. Last thing, did you have fun?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, anything you want to leave anybody out there that's listening, catching the playback, and the people that are catching this live?
Just remember, never judge a book by its final product. It's Many, many years ago when I was competing in the marketplace, I would always look at the guys who were just looked so good and they put the words together, everything. They looked so proper. They were so impressive with the words and how they put it together, especially for somebody like me that's an immigrant and my accent still comes out till today. I was eventually realized.
Hold on for a second, Patrick. Hold on for a second. Congratulations, Audrey Kittles on comment and Valuetainment. Congratulations on Sean Stafford on Valuetainment. Did somebody say you read you big time? So, but congratulations.
That's a part of it, James.
That's a part of it. So congratulations to those two guys for winning those 2 copies of your book. They'll be shipped out. So
excellent.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
But what I was saying to you is the fact that when I was coming up, I saw a guy. I'll give you two. I won't give the name, but I'll give you 2 stories. I saw these guys, and I said, "There's no way I can ever compete with these guys. Never." I looked at him, and I said, "Oh my gosh! Look at the way he looks. Look at the way he talks. Look at the degree that he got from the university that he got it. Pat, you can't compete with these guys." And then I started showing up to the office, and then I realized behind the degree, behind the looks, behind the incredible message that's being given was somebody that was now willing to pay the price of working very hard and improving. This is where my philosophies became very clear years ago. I said, I simply have to outwork. Then my next one was out improve. Then my next one was out strategize. And then my last one that takes years and years and years to find out is I'm going to outlast you. If I outwork you, if I out improve, if I out strategize, if I outlast, it's going to be very hard for anybody to compete with me. So if anybody that's watching this, don't be intimidated by the big degrees. Don't be intimidated by the good looking guys. Don't be intimidated by all the people that talk all the right language on YouTube. There was a time when we got on YouTube, we only had 500 subscribers and others had 1 million. We never thought we'd pass them. Never. We were like, oh my gosh. But behind closed doors, we outworked, we out-improved, we out-strategized, and we outlasted. And then all of a sudden we look up saying, wait a minute, what the hell just happened? So don't worry about it. If you do those 4 things, I'm personally going to give you a guarantee that eventually everything's going to work out for you if you do those 4 things.
All right. Mike Dukes, I see that you commented Valuetainment, but we already had 2 people that won, Audrey Kittles and Sean here. They already won. So, but I want to say once again, thank you for tuning in. Glad you had fun. Definitely learned a lot and definitely appreciate it. Until the next video, podcast, cartoon, or whatever else you see me do crazy around the globe. Peace. Be safe. I'm out. Thank you.